All right, before we dive into creating a Facebook page or going over all those details, if you're going to start your first highly engaged page, there are a few steps that you need to take. Now, the first step is to find a page that's right for you. Now, it would be literally impossible to go through every single combination of pages or niches or communities that you could start. It's quite literally limitless. But the number one thing is you need to identify a niche you're passionate about. And I'm going to cover that in a little bit. But I always tell everybody you need to start with a page, at least in the beginning. You need to start with a page that you enjoy, an interest that you're passionate about. And with that interest, you need to make sure that your audience size and demographic hits the sweet spot. So when you identify a niche you're passionate about, I've had a few people come to me and say, well, what if I'm not really passionate about anything? Well, that's BS. I mean, seriously, think about it. Everyone is passionate about something. It doesn't matter what it is. You're passionate about something. The problem is some passions are so broad that you don't really consider them as a way to monetize it. For example, you might say, oh, I love coffee. Well, I love coffee. I drink coffee all the time. But coffee might seem broad to some, but for me, I can immediately think of coffee-based shirts. I could think of coffee-based mugs that I could be selling, coffee-based jewelry that I could be selling. Granted, I'm not going to open up my own coffee roasting company like Death Wish Coffee, and I'm one of their customers, but if you open your mind, you can come up with ideas all over the place. You just have to find out how to monetize what you're passionate about. And that leads me into making sure your audience size and demographic hits the sweet spot. So what do I mean by that? First of all, your interest is going to need to have at least 1 million people. And the reason I say that is because any interest under 1 million people, in time, you're going to saturate that market to the point where you're not going to get a huge profit or return on investment when it comes to promoting product after product. Once you get to that threshold of over or at least 1 million people, you could quite literally advertise to them for years and never run out of people that want to buy something. The analogy that I like to give is, let's say you had a brick and mortar store, and let's say it was catered to comics or something crazy. But let's say in the city you lived in, you had 1 million people that were interested in comics. It's pretty safe to say that your business would stay in business because you have 1 million people that might not show up to your door every day, but 1 million people are going to cycle through, and there's going to be one person that wants to take a look at a comic that didn't want to take a look at a comic 2 weeks ago. The next step that I like to say, or the next sweet spot, is the demographic above the age of 25. The reason I say this is because anybody over the age of 25 has kind of gotten their life established. Now, you're going to find people that are younger that have the same establishment that they have in their lives than a 25-year-old does, but a 25-year-old's typically out of college, or they have found a job that pays decently, and they have a little bit of disposable income. Just in the broad comparison, an 18-year-old does not have as much disposable income as a 25-year-old does. Now, I've had a lot of success with the 18 to 24-year-old demographic, but you want your primary demographic to be above the age of 25. The next step is a broad or a sub-niche of a broader interest. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say you were very passionate about sports. Now, I myself am the furthest from a sports person, but the example that I have is, if you love sports and are passionate about sports, you're not passionate about every single sport. You're not passionate about cricket if you're from the US, and cricket's very popular in the UK. Now, a sub-niche of a broader interest would be, let's say you like sports and you enjoy fishing. Well, fishing is still a broad interest. Fishing is a sport, but what about fly fishing? Now, fly fishing is a sub-niche of a broader interest. And when you have that sub-niche of a broader interest, you can start to zero in on a targeted demographic of people who are passionate about something specific that you're passionate about yourself. So how do you find your audience sizes and demographics? Well, there are two things that I utilize. One is a Facebook search, and that's searching right within Facebook itself. And then the other one is utilizing Audience Insights. I'm going to be doing a video here right after this slide to go into how I would utilize both. Now that you're at your main Facebook page, you can utilize the search at the top to find interests. I can easily just type in interests and it's going to list all of the interests that I can utilize through Facebook by just scrolling down. This is a very simple, but it can be a very tedious way of finding interests, but it is a very nice reference if you're just drawing a blank, can't think of anything. Just scroll through these and you can get an idea. As I'm scrolling through, I can immediately see something like paintballing. There's 3.8 million people interested in paintballing. So for the sake of this, what if I want to get a more targeted audience, a more targeted idea of how many people are interested in paintballing and what the demographics are? This is going to be where we go into Audience Insights. To get to Audience Insights, you do have to have a Facebook advertising account. So in the description, make sure you go to business.facebook.com and set up an advertising account. Otherwise, you will not be able to get to Audience Insights. To get there, you just click on one of your ad accounts and you're going to have an ads manager up here. You'll see the Facebook logo and these three bars. Simply click the three bars, go to All Tools, and click Audience Insights. And that'll take you right to Audience Insights. And now that you're here, what do we want to do? We want to find out a more generalized idea of what our demographics are for paintballing. We know 3.8 million people like paintballing, but how are we going to figure out what the best maybe age group? So in interest, if I just type in paintballing or paintball, there's 250 million people active in the US that use Facebook between the ages of 18 on up, and both male and female. So if I type in paintball, we're going to see what these age and gender demographics are going to turn into. We have 3.5 to 4 million people, which correlates with the 3.8 million people. But check this out. I personally thought there'd be more men that liked paintball, but there's a pretty almost a balanced 43% women and 57% men are interested in paintball. But here's what's really interesting. Between the ages of 18 to 24 and 25 to 34, the men have a lot, but then they drop at 35 to 44, and then the women between 18 to 44 are all pretty congruent with paintball interests. So this is how I get an idea of what my demographic would be. So what's nice to know is if I want to do a page-like ad to women and men, I might even want to split this up and target women between the ages of 18 to 44 and target men between the ages of 18 to 34. So this is how I would utilize Audience Insights to get an idea and a feel for the length and the size of my audience and target market. In the coming videos, I'm going to show you how I would utilize Audience Insights to find a very targeted market while I utilize a Facebook page-like ad. So stay tuned.